My name is Steve Smith. I'm here to talk about my great-grandfather, John Wesley Smith. His mausoleum, if you enter Beech Grove Cemetery from Kilgore, you enter and you'll pass the office, and his mausoleum is the first one on the left. It was built in 1912. Even though he doesn't die until 1927, the reason it was built in 1912 is he had a business venture that he sold out that year, so he had some extra revenue or cash in his hand, and plus he had a daughter that died earlier, and then they moved her casket to the mausoleum. This is a picture of my great-grandfather. This is John W. Smith here. It's his father over there. He was born in Ohio, Darke County, Ohio in 1859, and when he was a couple of years old they moved to Ridgeville, and my great-grandfather here on the left had a farm there. He was a farmer. And the gentleman in the middle is my grandfather, who was born in 1895. So my guess is from the picture, he was probably about 12 years old. So this picture is probably dated about 1907. My grandfather, John Wesley, attended Ridgeville College and got a degree in bookkeeping. And then in 1871, he worked in, which was the Beehive, which was the general store in Ridgeville, and he worked there as one of the cashiers or one of the floor people, and that was owned by Davis Kitzelman, and this started in 1871, and he had a partner, William Miller. Mr. Miller retired in 1880, and then so Mr. Kitzelman's son, one of his sons, he had 5 sons, 3 daughters. The first one was adopted. They adopted him 6 months after they were married, and that was Alva Kitzelman. Of course, Alva Kitzelman, he only worked the store for a few years. He was an inventor, and then he invented, they hit the roller skating. There was a roller skating craze going across the United States, and he got a patent on a roller skate because he had ball bearings to the wheels. So that was very good, and ironically, it passed. So they had hundreds of thousands of roller skates, and they ended up, the roller skating trend was just hitting Australia at that time, so they were able to ship them to Australia. So anyway, my grandfather, John W. Smith, was a cashier in the store. Eventually, Davis Kitzelman sold it to his son, Davis Monroe, in other words known as Roe Kitzelman, and sometime in there, my grandfather bought the store from him. And in between that time, or during that time, he married Mary Alice Kitzelman. There's 3 daughters. One ended up Mrs. McCamish in Winchester, and another one, John Frederick, who lived in Kokomo. 1886, this was when oil was first starting to be found, and natural gas in the area. He became friends with L.G. Neely, and they formed a partnership. And for my grandfather's part of the partnership, what he put in, there was a bankrupt pipe company in St. Mary's, Ohio. He bought that company out of bankruptcy, put the pipe up as his part of the partnership, and so it was Mr. Neely and the wildcatter, the guy that knew how to find oil. His name was, that's Mr. Neely, and then there was M.F. Wood from Parker City, was also a partner. So in 1886, they secured leases, most of them in the Selma, Parker, farmland area. And then, which hit the newspapers, he sold out, which is supposed to be one of the largest deals, about a $200,000 deal at that time. And there was different partnerships, but this one was one of the largest ones. And so he sold out at that time, and that was about 1912, and that's why the mausoleum was dated 1912. He also had other partnerships, and one of them I know sold to Standard Oil. He moved to Muncie in 1900 during this time period, and then when he sold his interest out, the oil companies, 1912, 1913, 1914 time period, he became president of Muncie Oil Engine, which sits on South Walnut Street, and they made steam engines. And my grandfather was president at that time of the daily operations, but they could see steam engines were on the way out and diesel engines were coming in. So my grandfather was shown as a little boy there in the picture that I showed previously. In 1926, he could see the transition's going to happen. So he sold his interest out. Muncie Steam Engine, matter of fact, ends up going bankrupt. But then he started or bought into Midwest Metal Products, and was national sales manager. My grandfather also had other interests. I know he had interest in some farmland, which was in a plantation of all places, which was down in South America. And at that time, he was also, at the time of his death in 1927, he died on February 5th, 1927. He was on the board of directors at Delaware County National Bank. He loved trains, loved transportation, so he was on the Indianapolis Street Railway Company, the Iron Mountain Oil Company, and the Chicago South Bend and Northern Indiana Traction Company, which at that time was for the commuters going into Chicago, and the line started in South Bend.